Hey guys, welcome to our last video, and our number 4 superstructure would be skin. So skin, of course, is the outer protective layer of our bodies, so it does serve a very important purpose for the structure of our body. So skin is actually pretty simple. There's 2 main layers, and there is a third area that we're going to talk about, but your book doesn't really count it as a skin layer. It's more of like a, how would I say, kind of like a middle ground between your skin and the rest of your body. So it's not really considered skin per se. So the first layer that we're going to talk about is the outermost layer, which is the epidermis. So this is what you actually see. And your epidermis has a lot of dead cells on it. So anytime you rub your hands like this, you're going to be losing a lot of skin cells all over your paper, which is kind of gross. But they do serve a purpose, especially when it comes to the hair on your head and on your arms and legs, which we'll talk about here in a second. So the epidermis is made up of dead cells, and they're made up of live cells. Okay, so the dead cells is the outermost layer, of course. So that is what you are essentially seeing. That's what you lose daily just from living your life. The living cells you can also see, but they're going to be just a little bit deeper because your skin is going to be pretty translucent. So you can still see these living cells, but you're not losing those, of course, because they're just a little bit deeper than the dead cells are. So dead cells, they can go through this process called keratinization. Okay, so it's a process that kills your skin cells, but makes the dead cells very sturdy and hard to destroy. Okay, so if you've ever gotten like a blister or a callus on your hand, or even like a scar, you notice that it's very rough feeling normally, and even your scabs that you get from an injury are very rough. So it's made up of dead cells, and those dead cells, they are supposed to be rough because it does give us an extra layer of protection. So once those cells die, they harden. Okay. So the keratin is made by the skin cells and making a waterproof protein. Okay, so our skin is essentially waterproof, right? Which is kind of cool. Because if we weren't waterproof, anytime we went swimming or got in the bathtub, we would blow up like a blowfish. So luckily our skin is waterproof, so it doesn't take in all that water that we're sitting in. And it's waterproof because of keratinization. So those dead cells are very important to us because the dead cells make our skin waterproof and allows that extra layer of protection because they are rougher than the living cells. So the living cells, of course, because they're not as tough, they are going to be underneath the dead cells. So again, you can kind of see them because your skin is translucent, which means it's thin enough to essentially see through. So when you look at your skin, you are seeing layers of skin, not just one. So the living cells would be underneath your dead cells. Okay. Now, before I go into skin hair, I'm going to skip down to the second layer, which is the dermis. The dermis is the innermost layer of your skin, so it is directly underneath the epidermis, and it is made up of only living cells. Okay, and then this third part right here, this is the part that I was telling you about that your book doesn't really consider it to be a layer of skin per se, but it's called the hypodermis. So it's the lowest layer of skin, and notice I put it in quotation marks because it's not really truly skin, but is mainly made of fat rather than actual skin. So this is the layer between your skin and the rest of your body. Okay, so that's why they don't really consider it to be skin per se. So now let me go back up here to skin hair. And I just find this really interesting and kind of gross at the same time. So your skin hair, okay, which means the hair on your body, the hair on your head, the hair on your legs, the hair on your arms, anywhere that you have hair, it is actually made of dead cells that has been keratinized. Okay, so what happens is you have a hair follicle, which is a tiny opening in your epidermis. Okay, and I don't know if you can really see this just by looking at your skin, but it would be where your hair is growing. Okay, it would be growing out from a hair follicle. So a hair follicle is a tiny opening on your epidermis. Excuse me. The lowest part of the hair follicle has cells, okay, and these cells are alive for the time being. And those cells reproduce, which means they make more cells. And they reproduce very, very quickly. And once those cells reproduce very quickly, it does cause your hair to grow, okay? But your hair that you actually see is not made of live cells. So once those cells die and keratinize, they turn into hair. So let me see if I can kind of draw you a picture here. So if this is your skin, let's say that this is your arm, okay? And right here would be the hair follicle. Okay, so if you've ever pulled a hair out of your head even, you can probably see the hair follicle that's attached to it. Okay, so down here you would have the live cells. And those live cells reproduce and reproduce and reproduce over and over again. And up here you would have your arm hair or whatever hair you're talking about. Okay, so this part right here is made up of dead cells that has been keratinized or hardened. So as these live cells keep growing, then it pushes this dead part further up. Okay, so these cells keep reproducing, causes the dead part to grow up and up and up, even though this part is dead. Okay, so it's kind of like, it reminds me of an icy pop. You know, the little popsicles that come in a clear plastic covering and you have to freeze them yourself. And you squeeze like the bottom of the package, and then the icy pop comes out of the package. That's what it reminds me of. So like this would be the part that you're squeezing, which causes the icy pop to come out. Okay, so as these live cells reproduce, it causes the dead part to come out. Okay, so that is this part is the actual hair follicle that has the live cells reproducing under the skin. So your hair is dead, okay, which is kind of funny to think about because, you know, you have to get haircuts all the time. I know all of us are struggling with getting a haircut right now, being on quarantine, but your hair itself is not alive. It's the living cells in the hair follicle that makes your hair grow and be long, okay? So the next thing is the erector pili muscle. Okay, so each hair follicle is connected to this muscle. So there would be a muscle down here. Okay, and of course that's not really drawn accurately, but this is the erector pili muscle. Okay, so your hair follicle is attached to that. So when you get cold or nervous, this is what causes you to get goosebumps. Okay, and it also causes your hair to stand up. So this muscle, when it flexes or when it expands, it causes this part to scoot up, and then in turn causes your hair to go up as well. Okay, now let me show you a picture of your skin. which is on the last page of your notes. We have made it to the end. So right here, this top layer, of course, is going to be your epidermis, okay? And then this bottom, or this middle layer right here is your dermis. And then down here where you have fat cells is going to be the hypodermis, okay? So the erector pili muscle, you can see, is right here. So anytime that muscle expands, it's going to cause everything else to go up. And then right here, let me find it. Okay, so right here is this thin layer of dead cells, which is what you lose. And then right here is the layer of living cells. Okay, and there's one other thing. Okay, the hair follicle is this area, so you can see it is attached to the erector pili muscle, because here's the muscle, and that muscle is attached to the hair follicle. So the hair follicle is where the living cells are, and then up here would be your arm hair or your leg hair or the hair on your head, wherever. So as this muscle flexes, it causes this part to stand up, okay? And then the living cells that is in the hair follicle, as they grow and reproduce, it causes your hair to be longer and to grow more. Now, all the other stuff like the sweat gland, the matrix, sweat duct, all that stuff, you do not need to know. That's just extra. But mainly just know the layers of skin and know about the hair follicle and the erector pili muscle. And that will conclude your Module 11 notes. I will post a different video for your study guide. So stay tuned for that and have a wonderful day.